Hello, welcome. It's Doug Cunnington here, and hopefully you could hear me. Let me know in the chat. Today we're going to go over writing content. It's a pretty common question. There's questions about, how to improve your writing and that sort of thing. And we're going to go start to finish, or I say start to finish. We'll do as much as we can. Oftentimes we have a lot of questions, and that's great. We will answer questions potentially along the way. If they're unrelated to what we're talking about, we may hold off towards the end. And we're going to start with just some hellos and that sort of thing. But once we get into the meat of it, generally the way it's going to work, we're going to, figure out a topic. If we can get one from the audience here, we can go from there. Otherwise, I'll pick one. And then once you have a topic, we'll then outline it. So that's the way I work. We'll outline it, kind of get an idea of what's going on. I actually pulled up Jasper AI just to see if we can get some ideas, especially if it's something I'm not familiar with. Even if I am familiar, the AI tools are typically pretty good to get some ideas maybe that you wouldn't have on your own. And then we'll go into the writing. And that's the part where we probably don't want to watch me try to write for more than a couple minutes. So I'll probably fill in a couple portions of the outline, beef it out, and you'll get the general idea of my writing process without the gory and, I would say, boring details of actually writing it. Plus, I'll spare you the poor typing speed and just the bad just keyboard skills that I have. So that's what we're going to do today. And of course, we'll answer questions about niche sites, authority sites, which are kind of synonymous and interchangeable synonyms that, I think they're kind of the same thing these days. Okay. And we have Daniel on. What's up? Good to see you. We have Jonathan as well. Gaz is here. Missed you last week. Our good buddy John, what's up? And a couple others. So thanks for joining in. As we are getting rolling here, I know a lot of most people actually do watch the replays later. So I appreciate that. I know the time zone doesn't always work out for you, and I'm happy that you're here. I am going to get a couple admin things out of the way quickly. So we do have notifications that go out. These are separate from the YouTube notifications, which generally prove to be kind of unreliable. Sometimes they go out late. Sometimes they don't go out at all. Kind of depends on your viewing habits. And if you want to make sure you get the notification from me via email, you could sign up. There's a link there. It's the first one in the description. And basically you sign up for my email list and you get a tag for YouTube notifications. And I send a very short email, usually about an hour before a live stream, to let you know. We have a couple of sponsors, Odys Global, which I'll roll a pre-recorded ad that I recorded earlier so that I can get a little rest in the middle and let my voice rest. Odys is the source for premium age domains. They're great over there. There's a lot of awesome domains you can go and browse around. Additionally, there are, what are called expert picks. So I'm one of those experts. There's a handful of others. And we see the domains that come out and we say, here's a cool domain. Here's what we would do with it. Here's some ideas. Next, we have Ezoic. And Ezoic has a few new shiny products out there. One of them is NicheIQ or NicheIQ, if you pronounce it the right way, which I don't. So I'll talk about that in a second. But NicheIQ is a better tool for niche sites. It's made to help sites find topics and manage their pages, specifically to grow quality visits and revenue from display ads. Built-in reporting and analytics so you can measure the performance of your SEO efforts on the bottom line by understanding the relationship between ranking positions, traffic, and revenue. You can also run experiments, so you can test and complete experiments based on titles and descriptions in search results that are proven to improve visits. So you can kind of A/B test, and it's all within the tool. So you can check it out. Cool thing with Ezoic, you don't have to have a page, or there's no page view minimum. So even if you have a young site, then you can go and check it out via Access Now. Couple links in the description, and thanks a lot to Ezoic. The other couple things are selfish and personal. And thanks for the folks that just hopped in. Today we're going to be watching me write an article, or at least a portion of the article. So we'll go into the details. And if you have any topic suggestions, subject to my approval, of course, but you can pitch it in the chat here. Otherwise, we'll come up with something on my own, which I don't even know yet. I should have thought of that ahead of time, but we'll roll with it. I like to think on my feet here. So, last couple things. I have a podcast, an audio podcast. I do understand you're watching over here on YouTube. So you probably like videos, which I am generally now publishing all the podcast episodes over on YouTube as well. Interviews are a no-brainer. Those do show up. I am now recording many of the solo episodes with video as well, because I know some people just use YouTube as a podcast player as well. And I don't necessarily do that, but there are a lot of shows where I'll watch the clips on YouTube and then I'll listen to the full show later. So I do have a podcast if you happen to be one of those people that listens to audio, watches video, and they read blogs like myself, then you could check out the Doug Show podcast, affiliate marketing and SEO. Those are the general topics we cover. And finally, I have another show that I was talking to someone yesterday who's been in the audience for a while, and I had a coaching session with him, and he had no clue at all that I had another podcast on financial independence and personal finance. And through our coaching session and conversation, I won't go into the details, obviously, it's confidential, but he was like, I want to earn X amount of money. And I think I need to have a big team and I don't know how to hire the people. And I was like, do you really want a big team? Because I, I, I am not sure. I didn't lead him. I just said, do you actually want to have a team of like 15 people so everything runs on, you know, uh, a process and systems and all that stuff? And he was like, I don't, I don't know. I really just want to have freedom with my time. And I think that is really what most of us are going for. Like, that's what we want. You want to have freedom with your time so that you can do whatever you want when you want to without checking with other people. And that includes projects and business endeavors that you want to get into. Like, you pick those two. You don't have to listen to your boss to work on something that you think is a dumb idea or to implement something in a way that you don't agree with. So really, he did not want to have a team. He wanted freedom with his time so he could hang out with his kids, go walk the dog, be outside, or whatever your hobby is, right? Maybe you're into Pokemon cards or something and that's what you want to do. So anyway, I have this other show. It's really a lifestyle podcast and maybe a show on happiness, but we talk about financial independence and personal finance. It's called Mile High Fi. And if you're like sort of next level and you're like, okay, like why am I trying to do this stuff? Check out that show. Okay. So I'm going to jump back to the chat because a bunch of people hopped on, which is fantastic. So today we're going to watch me write something. A lot of questions come in every single week about how do you write an article? How can you improve your writing in general? So we'll go over some ideas, and people are recommending things which, like I said, is subject to my approval. We'll see what we can run with here. The general process is going to be this. We're going to come up with a topic. We're going to outline it, and then we're going to, write it. Not all of it, probably. Even though I said start to finish, you don't want to watch me. You want to watch a time lapse of me writing. You don't actually want to watch me write, especially if I'm watching the chat as well, which brings me to the point. I think Alex, my buddy over at WP Eagle, I think he does actually do work while he's doing a live stream, which blows my mind. I mean, this is very tough to do. You don't want dead air, right? You don't want to just stop talking and do something unless you're doing something entertaining, which I don't think, typing probably is not that. So, all right, let's get into it here. We have Honey on as well. We have Maeve. Awesome. And God says, I've had what Germans call something Freud this week. A competitor's website has expired and is not available, and your DA went up. That's cool. Adrian and David are here. Thank you, guys. They're the moderators that keep order in the chat. So appreciate it. Shout out to those guys. Tell them thanks in the chat or even in the comments later. So Jonathan, yeah, we'll hit a couple questions and we'll get into the meat of it. And I appreciate everybody for hopping in on these live streams. Jonathan says, launch my site. I'm writing a lot of what I think is quality content. Emphasis is from me, not Jonathan. You're using stock images. When do you suggest going back and improving content with original images? That's an interesting question. I would say um, if you have the ability, just publish them with original images. So what is the holdup to actually publish them with the original images? I haven't studied this deeply, but I have heard, if you publish your content and it does well off the bat, it's better to do well on the sort of A/B testing that Google does. Is it gives you your site impressions based on the content. So if you're able to launch it and it does well right away, then you don't have to wait for further sort of A/B testing as the search engine works. So I would say if you could just publish it better the first time, that's good, unless you have a major holdup that prevents you from doing so. That said, you can arbitrarily, pick some periodic time where you think, I'll come back in 1 quarter or every 6 months. I'll have a look at it and make an assessment. So there's no specific time other than like the constraints of you and your resources and your life. Otherwise, I would say, well, shit, make it as good as you can with original images as soon as possible. That's better than waiting. You would also want to improve the content as soon as possible, but it's based on your constraints. And everyone, either it's time or it's money. Those are two of the major resources that are going to get in your way here. Tanvir says, is it good to approach a new niche blog with 10 to 20 how-to articles? Sure. I mean, that's fine. There's other context, but that seems fine to me. I don't have an issue with that. Marcus is on also. Okay, and here's some ideas. So we have portable power station. Okay. Anything specific, AJ? Are we talking like a review? What is it, or what? Can you be more specific? Portable power station. The pen is running out of ink. And that's AJ. Okay, and we're just logging ideas here. So we have John. John says guitar strings for beginners. And choosing guitar strings and the differences between guitar strings. All right, so those are interesting. Beginners, right strings for guitar, and differences. All right, and Maeve has the cool beers in Ireland. Okay, so I do know a little something about that with my beer judging background. John is going deep. How often to change strings? So a lot of stuff on strings. How often? Great. And how to? Great. And some stuff on IPAs. Good or bad? Okay, cool. So a lot of topics around beer. Okay, cool. And then Floor says, thanks for keeping us safe. Okay, I don't know what that is in regards to, but that's cool. Okay, as we're moving on, a couple more questions are coming. Okay, so Jonathan also says, my previous question was selfish. Next question, would you suggest the PPA method with Kate? I don't know what PPA is. Someone can tell me. And okay, cool. All right. And one other question here before we get into the meat of it. And if people have other suggestions, feel free to write them in. We actually have a ton. John was a wealth of ideas there. So Sohab says, does content really have to be 900 plus, or can it be less as long as it provides the required information? What does 900 plus mean? What is it? 900 plus. So there were a couple questions which I don't actually know what you're asking, so you may have to come back and fill in some details. And what we're going to do is get into the meat of what we're doing today, and that's writing content. And then we will go from there. So one thing that we will test out, and for the people that have been on for a few minutes, I did mention that I have Jasper open to do potentially a little research. We'll see how it goes. I typically don't use Jasper or other like AI tools for research, but everyone has they're really excited, really excited about AI tools. And I think for research, it makes a lot of sense. It can basically grab a bunch of information from the SERPs and then you have it right there and you can use it or not, right? So it's a good starting place. Okay. And Sohab says 900 plus words. So the question is, does content really have to be 900 words or can it be less? It doesn't have to be 900 words. It could be however long it needs to be. And Jonathan says PAA is people also ask. So the next question, do I suggest using people also ask with KGR to get topic ideas? Yeah, sure. I mean, you should use every fucking thing that you can to come up with keyword ideas. So KGR is a good way to get you to aim towards long tail keywords, and you can use people also ask. You can use you could use like Reddit. You can go to Quora. You can go to Answer the Public. You can use wherever else you can get keyword ideas. I've heard people will go to forums or they'll go to Reddit and then they'll see, what's ranking there and like ranking, say, in the top 5, and then they'll pull those keywords and then, run it through some other checks there. So, okay, let's get into it here. And we're good on ideas so far. So, and I like some of these that are beer related since I am wearing a beer related shirt here. So typically I do write over in Google Docs. That's kind of my go-to. I think a lot of people use that, although I have a buddy who I don't know, he still uses Microsoft stuff, which I guess some people still do. I don't know. Kind of odd to me these days since everyone I know uses something different, but they're using Google Docs typically. But he's using Microsoft products. Okay, so let's see, which one are we going to pick for today? Why don't we go for the differences between guitar strings? So kind of informational at heart, but really it is um, it's suggesting products. So if someone is looking at the differences between guitar strings, it's highly likely that they are going to purchase guitar strings in the near future. So, as I am doing a little research here, I'm interested from the chat specifically if you do use Jasper or other AI tools for your research and which one that you do use. So, we'll hop over here and we'll say, is my keyboard working for me here? There we go. What are the differences in, and we'll call it acoustic guitar strings. See, I'm such a bad typer. So we'll go ahead and just Google this really quick, and let me pop back full screen for a second as I pull that up just to make sure we're good to go. Okay. So what are the differences in guitar strings? And quick note, so I do have keywords everywhere running, so it shows the search volume here, which is probably quite small. And then there are some other details over here, related keywords and such. So when we pull this up, one thing that we do notice right away is it's fairly commercially driven. So we see 1, 2, 3, 4 ads at the top, and then some ads over here on the sidebar as well. So, it does mean that it's relatively commercial. It does look fairly kind of competitive. So acoustic guitar strings come in basic varieties, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so Sweetwater, that's a good place to look. And what we're going to do, we're just going to open up a few of these so we can see what is in there. And this, takes a minute or two. These are good sources. So Sweetwater is a big online retailer, and this is an acoustic guitar string buying guide. So it talks about a lot of different details. So we're looking at string gauges, the construction, the core, the materials, the coding, and some of those frequently asked questions. So that's cool. And then it's not super thorough. It doesn't go really deep into the string construction or the materials. And they mentioned two, so phosphor bronze and 80/20 bronze. And there are a lot of other materials. So I actually use typically I use a different string than those two. I have used those in the past, and I'm like testing different strings, but I actually use a nickel based alloy. I'm not sure all the details, but just from that alone, I know that even though this one's ranking number 1, it doesn't have it doesn't have all the information in here. They completely are missing a handful of other string materials. Okay. Now musician's friend. And again, we have sort of a general acoustic guitar strings for you. And it goes through some different stuff. So this one's a little more thorough. It does talk about like acoustic versus classical guitars strings, which are completely different. Talks about gauges, and I'm mostly thinking about materials in the gauge, but all the details are important. So as we scroll down here, they do talk about the big distinction, which is really important, between the classical guitars and steel guitar strings. As we scroll down, let's see if they talk about the materials. So here we have a little bit more information. So bronze, phosphor bronze, aluminum bronze, brass, polymer coated, silk, and steel. And the ones that I often use, I guess it's closely related to the aluminum bronze, but I'm pretty sure it's nickel. So we'll find it. We'll find it sometime soon here. Next, we have Masterclass, which I didn't realize that they are now writing like these types of articles, which is interesting. So as we're scrolling down, they talk about electric guitars, acoustic guitars. They talk about gauges, the cores. So let's look at the acoustic materials. So they go old school and talk about catgut. They have nylon, phosphor bronze, silk, and steel. I'll have to go figure out which strings I'm using back there. They have flat wound, round wound, and half round. So a couple different kinds. And this is probably why, and I'll hop back to the chat. This is why people are thinking, I want to use an AI tool so I don't have to go and read all this stuff and like figure it out. The other side of it, and we'll see when we use Jasper here, basically there are clear gaps in some of the content. Even the one that's ranked #1 over at Sweetwater, they don't even talk about some of the other string materials. So it's a very short article, very commercially based, and they leave out a huge piece of information. So the thing is, and then there's this other one from Masterclass where they talk about catgut, and I don't even know if you can get those anymore, right? That seems a little nuts. Like slaughtering cats for the strings. I don't think you can get catgut anymore. So and we'll see when we use the research tool here, but if you don't know very much about the topic area, you may have to go and just do deeper research anyway. It can still save time, right? But I think there's no way to there's no better way to decipher what's important than to go and check it out yourself. So as we scroll down, we have Guitar Center here, and they go pretty deep, kind of close to the musician's friend type. They have steel string acoustics, the nylon string acoustics, and we'll hop down and look at the string materials since that's what I've sort of fixed on. So they have coated strings. They talk about steel wire as the core. We have 80/20 bronze. And then we have aluminum bronze. So that's kind of what we were talking about before. And one of the big things with the aluminum bronze is, it's not as bright. It's kind of more neutral, so not as trebly, but also it has more corrosion resistance. So it just doesn't get corroded and dull and sound is dead. Okay, so one thing that I do notice with this particular article that's harder to pick out is they're not bolding things and it's not as scannable. So before I was able to kind of zip through, and this I'm kind of like, oh, I have to read this whole sentence. They don't have the subheadings of the specific string materials like we did maybe over here. So that makes a big difference, and it's a little harder to decipher. Or here specifically, they have the materials right here, and they're numbered and they're bolded and they're very easy to figure out. So we have a few things, and I'm going to hop over to the chat quickly before we start outlining. So Gaz says, I'm starting to experiment posting concise articles, so 600 to 800 words. Cool. Daniel says you use WriterZen for content brief, Word Hero for writing, and then Neuron Writer for optimization, then Grammarly to tidy up. I heavily edit the content though. And Daniel, I'm curious, is that faster to go through 1, 2, 3, 4 tools than to just do it? So is it actually faster or is it higher quality? And Gaz says that I've said this before, I find Jasper too expensive and it didn't know anything about my niche. Got it. All right. Okay, cool. So we have a couple things to go off of, and one thing that makes it easier is we can go and look at the little table of contents on each of these to essentially get the outline of the article, and that will make it much easier even if we don't have a tool to use. The only one that doesn't have that is this actually kind of shitty article from Sweetwater, which, I mean, this is more like a landing page for just an e-commerce page. So when we have the table of contents over here at Guitar Center. So these are a good start. So as many of you that have watched some of the videos, I'm not an avid user of Jasper, but we could hop over here and take a quick look. And I believe there's one to just like build this piece by piece. So a couple things that we may look at. So we do have the boss mode document, so you could write longer articles, and the content summarizers, so we can get the key points, which maybe we'll play with. The other thing is you can get this blog post outline. So I think because I'm literally trying to get an outline, that is where we're going to start. All right. Need to protect my voice here. And I am an affiliate for Jasper. If you do want to check it out, I get a commission if you do sign up. There's a 7-day free trial, and there's a link in the description so you can scroll down and check it out. So I'm just going to copy and paste, and we'll just put in, what are the differences in acoustic guitar strings? And we'll leave it as witty, and we'll go from here. And if anyone in the chat has an opinion, should we go with 3 outputs or less or more? I have heard people mention that they just make it 1 so that there's not garbage in here. But 3 is in there by default. So I'm just going to roll with that, but let me know in the chat. So I'm going to hit generate and see what happens here. Okay, so we do have, even though it said 3 outputs, we have 2. It says 2 new outputs, so that's cool. And we'll look at this outline. So acoustic guitar strings come in a variety of materials: bronze, phosphor, bronze, and nylon. Each material has its own unique sound. Bronze strings are most popular. Phosphor bronze are softer than bronze, making them great for fingerstyle. Nylons are light, making them perfect for beginners or people with smaller hands. And there's no one right string. It's about finding the ones for your style and the preferences. Okay. And it's largely the same. And one of the issues here, so we looked at a couple of the 4 highest rated over on the Google SERPs, right? So the top 4 results. And obviously they go into a little bit more depth. And one thing that is missing from the outline, and if you didn't know anything about your niche, and guys, I think this plays into exactly what you're talking about, this information seems okay. And if you didn't know anything about it and you just rolled with this, you would write an inaccurate article because it doesn't talk anything about the difference between a steel string acoustic guitar and a nylon string classical guitar. And if you put steel strings on a classical guitar, it'll basically break it. The bridge will probably come up. There's a lot more tension, so that won't work. Also, if you put nylon strings on a steel string acoustic guitar, it's highly likely that you can't get up to tension and the strings will break. Like they'll just break under the tension, which is slightly dangerous. You might damage your guitar a little bit if the strings snap. Nylon's not a hard material, but it could, shoot your eye out, basically. So that's one flaw in this specific output here. However, it doesn't mean it's completely, useless. There are a couple pieces in here that, maybe it's a little bit helpful. But basically, I would say neither of these are very good. So I'm going to vote these down. So I don't know who, like what they do with that. So what I would do instead is I would pop over here and essentially just copy and paste these over so we have something to work with. So we got that from Musician's Friend. So here they're talking about a lot of different strings, not just acoustic guitar strings. So this is actually not a great result for what we're looking for. So, and this is kind of dumb. Um, so they do have, how many strings do guitars have, which, may or may not be relevant. So 6 string, 12 string, most common, but we also have 7 or 8 string, which I think those are often like baritone type guitars. I'm not super into those. And then basses, which is clearly different. So this is such a generic kind of like what are guitars and what are guitar strings that it's not really getting us what we want to know. However, it doesn't mean we can't use some of this information here. So the other part is the Guitar Center. So we'll hop over here and we have something to start with. So from here, we probably can get started. And I see Tony's on, so thanks for hopping on here. And God says, if you're using Jasper to generate content in a niche you're not an expert in, it must take a huge amount of time to fact check. If you don't know the niche, how do you know it's correct? 100%. And I think that is potentially one of the issues. People probably know if they have a knowledge gap or not. However, the sad trend out there is to publish as much content as possible, as quickly as possible. If you're using an AI tool, obviously, most people these days are saying, hey, you need to edit it, make sure it's correct. You need to check it to see if it's written well, if there's some repeated sentences or phrases or something like that. At the same time, if you're hiring an agency to do your writing, they may not know anything about it. Even if they're not using an AI tool, they may not know anything about guitars, they may not know anything about beer, and you could end up in a situation where they do the research and they just don't know what they're talking about. So you end up with inaccurate information, which is bad, and you don't know it. And if you are getting it from an agency, there's potential that you're getting a large amount of content and you can't go through and check every little thing. Or if you do, you can miss it. And if you're not familiar with the topic area either, it sneaks through and you end up with lower quality content that is inaccurate. And this is why, often, I mean, I'm trying to use the tools, right? But often, especially in the recent interviews, like with Jamie or Jake, they're writing the content and they're spending a huge amount of time on the research. Maybe like Gaz is, talking about him being part of the niche and understanding like what what all the details are, and that's going to end up doing better. So you can potentially use the tools to help you, like Daniel mentions, to maybe have higher quality, but there's a chance if you have a blind spot that you could actually do worse. So we have some information here and we're going to do our outline. So from here, I'm going to truly do an outline. So I'll do a numbered list here and we'll do, yeah, just our standard kind of outline like this. And I do actually like the 12 versus 6 versus 12 strings. So that'll be like kind of the first thing. So that'll be, this is an iterative process. So off the top of my head, I'll say like what kind of guitar, and that could be the classical, or it could be the steel string, or the steel string, 12 string, right? And I don't have my other guitar up right now. And I can zoom in just a little bit here. A resonator. So that would have other considerations too. Resonator. And from here, we can lean on some of the other details. So we can talk about the differences between the the steel string versus the classical. And along the way, right, you potentially would write out the differences and why it makes a difference, which we'll come back to. So what kind of guitar? That's something you have to think about. The next is around the next thing we need to look at is probably the string. I think gauge is what I think about next. So the string gauge, and it varies on, manufacturer and stuff like that, but generally there's going to be like extra light, maybe a custom light. And for this kind of stuff, you can go and look at the different manufacturers to see what they have. Sometimes they call it different things, even though it's the same. Then maybe they have light, then medium, maybe heavy. And there are potentially like there's custom like hand wound strings, and you could actually like choose your gauges. So I'll maybe note that as completely custom. Those would be from like specialty suppliers and manufacturers, but they are out there. So we'll scroll up and let me drag this up here. So what kind of guitar? And then we'll think about the string gauge. Now after that, we'll look at the string material, which would also be mentioned in the what kind of guitar section. So the classical kind of on its own, and the rest, steel string, the 12 string, the resonator, typically those are going to be able to use the same kind of strings. So string materials here. And let's see if we're missing anything here. Okay, so string materials. And as mentioned, there's the bronze, the phosphor, bronze, and I think it may have been noted somewhere there's like an phosphor, bronze, and then I think Martin has a 92.8 phosphor bronze. Okay, and then there's the nickel that I mentioned before. I'm not sure if it's a nickel bronze. I think it might be a nickel bronze. There's the aluminum, right? Aluminium bronze, I think. And then we have the silk and steel. And there may be a couple others, but that should cover most of the strings that are out there. And then, of course, we have the nylon, which are, that's just a classical. Okay. So that covers like kind of the basics. Now, one thing I didn't even mention is like the traditional, the treated, and the coated. So I think, let's see what subsection that is under. Steel string acoustic. So that's just one of the details here. So maybe we'll put coated or not coded. Yeah, that should work. And then coding, and then we'll note treatments too, which I'm not super familiar with, but they must put something on the strings to make them more resistant. Now, after this, it's pretty good. There are some, potentially frequently asked questions. Like I think it says here, when should I change my guitar strings? How often? When should I change them and how often? Which is kind of the same question. And there's maintenance tips. So, when you're looking at purely like what is the difference in acoustic guitar strings, I think we covered it in these 4 sections here. And the posts that we ran into that are ranking well, they're kind of just buying guides. So they cover more. And I think, if you're thinking about a sort of a content cluster sort of idea, then these other questions could be short form, like we're talking about here, where someone's asking, how often should I change my guitar strings? And then you could like answer the question very specifically based on, the kind of guitar, things you could check for, that sort of stuff. Or maintenance, right? Acoustic guitar maintenance, that sort of thing. So we have a handful of points here, and it's pretty thorough from what I'm thinking about. Now, one area that I didn't look at all is the acoustic electric. So that is noted somewhere. Do they need different strings? So that could be something that you note in there. And let's take a look over at this one. Do they need different strings? So I don't think they need anything different. So a few manufacturers produce strings expressly designed for acoustic electric guitars, and you may want to compare their performance to your standards. But I don't think they do, but that could be something that you note in here. And that's something I wouldn't have thought of off the bat, because I guess in my head, I'm like, oh, well, I don't see specific acoustic electric strings out there when I've shopped for strings, so I didn't really think much of it. But that could be something to note sort of as a subsection here. What kind of guitar? So acoustic electric, which for the people that don't know, it's just a normal acoustic guitar, but it's outfitted with something that you could plug into either a PA or an amplifier of some kind, or your computer, depending on what you're trying to do. And then it converts the sound into some electrical signal that can be amplified or played louder. So from here, we have the outline. So like I mentioned before, you come up with the outline, or you get the topic first, you come up with the outline, and then you could write it. So right now, I'm going to roll a quick ad from our friends over at Odys Global that I recorded earlier, and I see we're at 12:21, so we just have a few minutes left, and just as I suspected, we're not going to be able to write the whole article, and you trust me, you don't want to watch me type the whole time. So let me find our clip here to roll for you, and then I'll be able to let my voice take a little break. And the thing is, I have another interview, awesome interview with someone that has a ginormous site. Very excited to bring this to you in a couple weeks, but I'll have to go and do that interview. So let's roll this ad. By Odys Global, the source for aged domains. These are premium domains. They've been around for a little while. And the featured domain for today is HS Hawaii. And it was a travel guide. It was a site about Hawaii, as you could imagine. One cool thing with Odys is you get this cool little logo. So that looks to be like a palm tree, which is cool. And this particular domain has been around for quite a while. So we'll dig into some of the details in just a second. you can hop over and see this at Odys, of course. And we're looking at the domain rating here. So it's checking in pretty well at 12. And the interesting thing is there's actually quite a few of referring domains, 137 total. And what I've noticed is maybe if the links aren't super fresh, the domain rating will drop, but actually the site overall still has a reasonable authority. So this site is really old. It's one of the oldest ones that I've seen, created in 1995. 1995. So is that 27 years old if I'm doing the math right? So domain rating, like I said, around 12. The domain authority is 24. Hawaii is in the name, so it's quite brandable if you're targeting something around Hawaii. And I actually went back to the Wayback Machine over here, the Internet Archive, to look at a little screen grab from, this is way back in 2005. So you can see it looks like a site from 2005, and I remember thinking these were like sort of state of the art back in the day. So you can see it is travel related, but there's also sections in here, at least the 2005 version, of accommodations, activities, dining, entertainment, health and wellness, transportation, real estate, travel services, weddings, shopping. And that is the cool thing with a sort of a general site like this. You can really branch out and cover a lot of different topic areas that potentially can pay really well, right? So for sure, there would be interesting topics to cover that are maybe like how to or really informational based, like the top activities on Oahu or top activities on the Big Island, top activities in Kona or something like that. That alone would be almost more keywords than you would know what to do with. But further, one great way to monetize in addition to display ads would be having reviews about tours that you could take, different services. So it could be like food tours, best places to like surf. It could be snorkeling, surfing lessons, excursions of some kind. Like on the Big Island, they have like the observatory up there. So I'm sure there's excursions and tours where people will take you up, give you whatever warm coats and stuff. I think that mountain's like 14,000 feet or something. So you need like warm clothes, and you can watch the sunrise or go check out the observatory and check out the stars. So there are excursions and different things, and those are great because you can refer people that are searching to book something. You can refer them over to the service business, and then you of course earn money from the referral. Of course, there's accommodations and other things that you can help refer over to, but there's a huge opportunity, I believe, for affiliate commissions in that way and referrals in general. Here's some of the links. So pretty amazing. These are the do follow referring domains: Stanford.edu, NBC News, Tripod, Angel Fire. So those are kind of older school, blogs. So maybe those don't matter too much. But you also have Outside Online. You have another edu, SDSU, publicradio.org, New World Encyclopedia, Frommers, which is a travel company. So a ton of highly related backlinks and referring domains. So it's worth checking out, especially, number one, if you're in Hawaii. That's amazing because you probably can get some custom images and have like a full travel blog around Hawaii. If you're just into Hawaii and obsessed, which I know some people that are, I actually like Hawaii quite a bit. I've only been to Oahu and the Big Island. Super fun. I had a great time, and would maybe when travel is a little bit cheaper, I'll swing back over there. But amazing place to go. And the point is, if you're obsessed with Hawaii, it could be a great thing to give you an excuse, number one, to travel there more often, and otherwise just do research and network with people in Hawaii, because that's another thing you could do, is put together sort of directories and information. And we didn't even talk about weddings and all the different services and businesses that support the wedding industry. You can make referrals for those as well, whether it's a venue or a photographer, or videographer, or wedding planner, or anything like that. All those services can have referrals, and it would be a great way to earn money from affiliate type commission. So this is HS Hawaii over there on Odys Global, and you should check it out if you're interested in it. And if you join using my affiliate link, then you can get $100 into your account. And if you buy something, I can earn a commission. So thanks a lot to Odys Global. And certainly check it out. Even if you're not interested in a travel domain, they have many others. Plus, they have a great filtering system so you can maybe find something in your niche. All right. So thanks to Odys Global out there. And as we are wrapping up, because I will have to jet here in a minute, one thing to note is Daniel was saying, can we pick this up next week? I'd like to see the article all the way through the process, which I did advertise it as like start to finish. So if we do hop back over here, we do see the outline, oops, we see the outline over here. And we started with, doing a little research on other blog posts that were ranking well. And then because I know about the topic area, I filled in some of the gaps that I know definitely exist. And I tried to use Jasper to come up with the outline, but it didn't quite pick up what we were going for. Part of the reason I think is the articles that are ranking the highest don't do a good job covering what I believe should be in this article. What are the differences in acoustic guitar strings, which is very specific. So one of them skipped details. One of them was talking about, actually this one was pretty decent. This one was probably one of the best. The master class one kind of sucks. It's talking about like all guitars everywhere and the different strings, not acoustic guitar strings. Acoustic guitars are covered in there, but not solely. So there's a lot of just erroneous information in here. And then we have the Guitar Center, which is pretty good. They actually cover things probably the best. There is some extra information in here, but it is like all about guitar strings versus the differences between acoustic guitar strings, which is a very specific question. So that said, Daniel did say, hey, it'd be cool to see like how you do this and write it all the way through. As I mentioned a couple times, like watching me write it out is probably pretty boring, and it would take a pretty long time. Like if I was writing this out, it would probably take me a couple hours. Like if I wrote the whole thing out, it would take a couple hours. We didn't get much from Jasper in terms of the outline, but I did want to check to see like a blog post introduction. So we'll put the blog post title in here, and the audience would be musicians. So we'll put that in, casual voice, and we'll change it to 2. So we'll generate 2 outputs here. Let me zoom in so hopefully you can read it a little bit better. I'll move myself over here. So there are many different types of acoustic guitar strings available on the market today. So what are the differences between them? And which type is right for you? In this blog post, we'll take a look at some of the most popular acoustic guitar string types and their pros and cons. Read on to learn more. That's pretty solid. That's good. That actually would save me some time. I would use that. So I'll copy it, and then we could hop over here, and we kind of started, the outline with the meaty stuff, but this would be a reasonable intro. And from here, we can go back to the templates, and we'll say what kind of guitar and classical guitar. So here's where I'm not sure we'd be able to use, like we'd really have to be detailed about what we want from Jasper in this case. And that might be something that, we kind of write on our own and maybe have Jasper like beef it out. So that is That is something that you can do here. As many of you probably know, I don't use Jasper often, but it's fun to play with, and it makes it a little bit easier for me to do a live stream and show you some of this stuff. But what you potentially would do is just, pop in, and this is exactly how I would write. So you have the outline, and maybe we would say, okay, we have a sentence here, or this is the subheading, but then we have a sentence in here, and basically we would write it out. So, the type of guitar makes a difference in what strings you'll use. And I'm going to write this really short, so it's really important because the strings you have different tensions. Different tensions. ... Okay. So, and this is how you could do it, especially if you have like a hard time writing like longer form content. Just write like the most basic thing that you could think of, and then write another sentence here, and then write another sentence here, and just write one sentence for each part of the outline, and do that all the way through. Then after that, you can go and beef it up a little bit more. You can do a little more research. Maybe you are an avid user of some of the AI tools, and you could put in like this piece of information, like these couple sentences, and then see what Jasper will write for like two more sentences, for example. But this is a way to do it if you are really having a hard time like getting pumped up to do it. So with that said, thanks everybody for joining me today. If you like these, hit the thumbs up, leave a comment, and be sure you're subscribed to the channel and all that stuff. So appreciate it. Be sure to check out the sponsors. We have Odys Global with premium age domains, and then we also have Ezoic. And I talked about NicheIQ today, or NicheIQ. So you can check that out. And don't forget, I have a podcast out there. You can sign up for the email list as well. There are links in the description. And I'll catch you next week. And thanks, Fruit Bat Cat, for saying hello. And we'll see you next week.